Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Okay, imagine this. You're earning the exact same salary every single month, putting in those grueling hours, hitting every single metric at work, but somehow your bank account just completely empties out weeks before your next paycheck. It's that unsettling realization that your money just isn't yours anymore. Today, we're diving straight into something millions of us are feeling right now: the rapid erosion of American purchasing power. We're going to break down the data to see how making the exact same amount of money, but paying significantly more for the absolute basics, is literally shifting wealth away from the middle class. If you felt like you're sprinting on a treadmill just to stand still financially, trust me, you aren't imagining it. The whole underlying mechanics of our economy have shifted dramatically under our feet. So, let's dive into exactly how this is happening. Picture this. You step out for a quick lunch on a Tuesday, fully expecting to drop, maybe $5 on a standard burger. But suddenly, the register rings up $9. Or even worse, you're looking at a lease renewal for the exact same apartment you've lived in for 2 years. Literally nothing has been upgraded, the plumbing probably still rattles, but that $1,200 rent, boom, it just jumped to $2,000. And these aren't just isolated one-off anecdotes, right? They represent this brutal, systemic recalculation of daily life. The sticker shock has totally moved from the luxury car lot straight into the drive-thru and into our mailboxes. The basic math of just existing has profoundly changed over a remarkably short period. So if you've been feeling an undeniable squeeze every time you look at your monthly budget, your lived experience is entirely valid. The baseline cost of entry for a normal life just went way up. Now, we all know the name for this, right? It's inflation. But for those of us actually tracking these economic shifts, it's a whole lot more than just some textbook definition of rising prices. It really operates as a highly aggressive, hidden tax. See, when the money supply expands without a matching surge in economic output, every single dollar sitting in your savings account immediately loses a tiny fraction of its power. And the kicker? You didn't vote for this tax. It wasn't on any local ballot, yet it continuously drains your wallet, shrinking your purchasing power around the clock. Even if you're grinding just as hard, those same dollars fundamentally represent less energy, less value, and less security than they did just a few years ago. It's like this invisible headwind, making every financial goal mathematically harder to reach.
All right, let's move to section 1 and see how this builds. Why everything costs more, and the cascading effect behind it.
To really grasp the sheer size of this, we have to look at how insanely interconnected global supply chains actually are. Because when massive macroeconomic shocks hit, they absolutely do not stay contained in one area. Let's trace it out real quick. An increase in global fuel prices doesn't just mean a more expensive trip to the gas station for you and me. That fuel powers the massive freight ships, the trains, and the delivery trucks. So when transportation costs spike, the cost to deliver a simple box of cereal to your local grocery store absolutely skyrockets. And companies, well, they're often operating on pretty thin margins to begin with, so they have zero choice but to pass those elevated costs straight down to us, the end consumer. It creates this rapid, overwhelming cascade. You aren't just paying for the food anymore. You're absorbing the compounded cost of global shortages, higher diesel prices, and stretched logistics networks every single time you swipe your card. And man, this cascading effect hits a massive brick wall when it reaches the housing market. I mean, for decades, we've talked about the American dream of homeownership. Today, that's largely been replaced by the American reality of just trying to make rent. In major cities, and honestly, increasingly out in the suburbs too, rent prices have essentially doubled. Meanwhile, housing inventory remains historically tight, and those high interest rates have completely sidelined prospective buyers. The result of all this? A massive portion of young Americans have effectively just stopped buying homes entirely. They're locked into this perpetual renting cycle, forced to spend an astronomical chunk of their hard-earned salaries just on a place to sleep. When the single biggest line item in your budget becomes wildly unaffordable, it doesn't just cut into your fun money. It fundamentally halts wealth generation for an entire demographic. But this squeeze isn't just happening at the big macro level with real estate. It's a vice grip right down to the most basic components of daily survival. Sure, you can delay buying a new TV, you can definitely put off that vacation, but you absolutely cannot opt out of buying groceries or putting gas in your car to get to work, right? Basic commodities, eggs, milk, meat, fuel, these are non-negotiable expenses. And because we have to buy them, when their prices surge, the middle class feels the impact immediately and severely. There's really no maneuvering around it. The daily grind of just keeping the lights on and the fridge stocked has become tangibly, painfully more expensive every single week, just eating up whatever little financial buffer families thought they had built up.
Now, what's really interesting is how this traps us. Section 2, the wage and debt trap.
Okay, here is where the math gets incredibly frustrating for the everyday worker. It's the classic battle between your nominal wages and your real wages. Let's say you do everything perfectly right. You put in the extra hours, you successfully negotiate a promotion, and you score a 5% raise on paper. Awesome, right? That nominal increase feels great for a moment. But if the baseline cost of goods and services went up by 8%, your real wages, what that money can actually buy you at the store, have effectively gone down. You've essentially taken a 3% pay cut despite getting a raise. This core imbalance right here is the engine of our current financial strain. Hardworking people are advancing in their careers, pulling in historically higher salaries, yet when they check their bank statements, they feel completely, inexplicably stuck in place. Inflation is just silently devouring their upward mobility. So, what happens when those raises fail to cover the widening gap of daily expenses? People naturally look for a lifeline, and almost always, that lifeline is a credit card. To cover the shortfall for groceries, utilities, or gas, out comes the plastic. It usually starts as a temporary fix just to survive the month, but then the high interest rates take hold. What began as a strategic move to just manage cash flow quickly metastasizes into this expanding monthly liability. The interest compounds, the minimum payments swell, and the ability to set anything aside for savings, it completely evaporates. It's a remarkably swift descent from just trying to manage a tight budget to being entirely ensnared in a brutal debt cycle. The financial breathing room disappears, leaving families trapped by the exact tools they used to keep themselves afloat in the first place. So the crucial point we need to look at next is Section 3, Surviving Modern America. Faced with this absolutely relentless economic pressure, people are adapting. But let me tell you, the nature of that adaptation is totally exhausting. I mean, we used to view hustle culture, picking up a side gig or launching a small business on the weekends, as a cool strategy to get ahead, to save up for a down payment or fund a dream vacation. But today, that extra labor has been heavily downgraded to basic survival. People are working full shifts, only to immediately log on to rideshare apps or freelance platforms just to cover their rising utility bills. They're meticulously cooking every single meal at home, ruthlessly auditing their bank statements to cancel any hidden subscriptions, and relying heavily on algorithmic budgeting apps to track every single penny. It's a level of financial hypervigilance that is just mentally draining. What used to be the extraordinary lengths of the incredibly ambitious has simply become the mandatory baseline just to keep from going under. And this brilliantly illustrates what the research is pointing to. All this data, all these compounding pressures, bring us to a stark, unavoidable realization derived straight from the sources. Financial survival has become a major challenge in modern America. It's such a simple, unadorned statement, isn't it? But the weight behind those words is immense. It acknowledges that the goalposts haven't just been moved a little bit, they've been placed on an entirely different playing field. If you're sitting there finding it incredibly tough to navigate the current economy, despite doing everything by the book, please know that the data completely validates your experience. Basic financial survival, not luxury, not excess, just making it from one month to the next without falling behind, is quite literally the defining economic challenge of our time. Ultimately, the core takeaway from all of this isn't just about expensive commodities sitting on a grocery store shelf. It's about the fundamental mechanics of value itself. Like a slow-moving anvil, persistent inflation absolutely shatters the value of a hard-earned dollar. It systematically weakens the financial foundations of millions of people, completely indiscriminately penalizing those who are working full-time jobs, contributing to the economy, and doing their best to save responsibly. When the actual medium of exchange itself loses power, well, every downstream financial decision becomes infinitely harder. This is way beyond a temporary cyclical annoyance at the cash register. It is a massive structural shift that demands our attention. It forces us to entirely rethink how we earn, how we save, and how we even conceptualize the nature of wealth building in an environment where cash itself is constantly evaporating. Which leaves us with an incredibly important, maybe even slightly scary question to consider. If persistent inflation continues to steadily reduce the power of money, what does the future of American prosperity actually look like? Are we heading toward a permanent structural change where traditional milestones of success are just permanently out of reach for the average earner? I really encourage you to think about your own purchasing power and how you might need to adapt your personal financial strategies moving forward, because understanding the raw mechanics behind these shifts without all the external noise is the absolutely vital first step in navigating them successfully. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking the tough questions, keep analyzing the data, and I'll catch you next time.